Well, I think certainly the biggest challenge was just getting used to a whole new way of doing things. You know, I came from a very high-pressure job where we're always on deadline, and we have to get it done right now, and then we got to move on to the next newscast. And things just don't work that way in Tonga, and probably not in a lot of developing countries. So I definitely had to have to get used to a much slower pace, to kind of like be a lot more patient than perhaps I used to be in the past. And then also learning, a whole new culture and a whole new way of doing things. The culture is very different here. There are very different roles for men than there are for women. The men tend to work in the bush or work in the farm growing crops. At night, the men go together and they drink kava. During the day, the women will weave all together. When they go to church on Sunday, the men and the women sit on separate sides of the church. You never see a Tongan like holding hands or even actually walking very often with a member of the opposite sex. I mean, the gender lines are very separated from what we're used to in the States. And women are definitely treated differently here than they are in other parts of the world.
Because the women may not speak up. The women tend to always take a back role, because in the Tongan culture, the men are always the ones who speak up in the front, who come to the bank and ask for a loan. But when you go to the business, who's keeping the records? Who's banking the money? Who's planning the business and knows what the business can afford and where, whether it's time to diversify, the timing for the business? It would be the woman.
So that took a little bit of getting used to. Certainly the language. I've never learned a foreign language before, so it was difficult for me to not only have to learn a foreign language, but have to learn how to learn a foreign language. And I finally picked up enough where I could get by, where I can generally understand at least the gist of what someone is saying to me. I'm not quite as good at speaking it as I am understanding it, but in my job at the bank, it was really important to be able to understand what people were saying. Malolele, okone vasi, ko vasi, pulelahi, pali mohe hilltop. Pepe vasi.
Sai albito.
Oh. Did you understand what I just said?
Io mahino albito.
Was it good?
Io understand.
You understood.
Tongan is good. Yes.
Sai pe or Kovi.
No, it's good.
It's good.
Yeah,
okay.
I can understand it.
Okay.
Yeah.
His job is to assist almost everyone in any way we can assist.
There's one business owner in particular that I feel really good about. He was at his wit's end. He thought he was going to have to close his small store. He had a $20,000 overdraft at one of the local banks, and he couldn't afford to buy any more supplies. He was giving away all of his food to his family and friends. He was smoking tons of cigarettes just for his own use, and he was even lending money to people in his village. And I went in and I tried to explain good business practices to him. I told him he had to start keeping track of what he was spending. I showed him how he could pay down his overdraft. And he actually listened to everything I told him. And within the course of a month, he had started to turn his business around. A couple months later, he had paid down that overdraft, and he went out and he was able to finance a taxi. And so now, in addition to a successful business, he now has a taxi that he runs, which is bringing in additional money. And he's a real success story. And I really give him a lot of the credit, because he just didn't know exactly what needed to be done, because there really is no business education in Tonga. And being able to go in and just tell him some really basic, simple things, and he took it and turned his business around. It was very rewarding to see. My boss at the bank, Fuka, is just a terrific individual. He's the kind of guy I'd like to work for in the U.S. I mean, he's a really good manager, but most importantly, he's a really good friend.
Steve is like he's like a brother to me.
He looks out for me. Anything he can do to help me, He really does. And even things like, I remember when I went diving one time and I came back and told him I had seen sharks. He was so upset that I'd been in the water with sharks, and he says, "You have to be careful." He said, "We don't want anything to happen to you." And you can just tell that he's really genuinely concerned about me and interested in me.
We used to go out fishing together with Steve sometimes. I think I'm more experienced in fishing than Steve.
Well, this time I went out, and it was Fuka and another Tongan and myself on this little boat. And we were out, put my hook in the water, and I caught the first fish of the day. Well, as it turns out, that was the only fish that we caught. Neither Fuka or the other Tongan, both who have been fishing all of their life, caught any fish that day.
But one time I didn't get a fish. Steve got one, like this. Sometimes I go out fishing, bring some fish for him.
He's the kind of person that you feel really, really lucky to have as a friend in Tonga. And I think that my experience here has been so much better because of getting to know Fuka. I live in a family complex. It's the property of Kepu and Save Tupo. Their house is right by mine, and that is, you know, I said it's a very close distance from where I live. Right next to my house is the house of James Barber, which is also owned by Kepu Tupo. James is a education volunteer. He was in my group, and we have lived next to each other about 6 feet apart, as you can probably see, for the entire time that I've been here in Vava'u. And then there's my house. I have, actually, by Peace Corps standards, a pretty nice house. It's 2-bedroom with bathroom, big living area with 2 couches in it, and also a really nice sized kitchen. This is my dog Saltia right here. I got Saltia from Justin, another volunteer who left when he completed his service, and then Saltia became mine. He's a little bit hyper, but actually a pretty good dog. Doesn't always do what I want him to. I mean, one of the challenges of living on an island is that everything we have in Vava'u pretty much comes here on a boat. If the boat doesn't come, we just run out. Since I've lived here, we've run out of gasoline, we've run out of eggs, we've run out of onions, we've run out of beer or come very close to running out of beer. There's just a lot of things that will just disappear from the store shelves because the boat has not come to replenish the supply. In Tonga, there's so much that you give up, particularly when it comes to your diet. Things that we would take for granted in the U.S., like fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, fresh meat. Actually, we never have fresh meat here. It's always frozen. Those are just things that we don't have here. The vegetables, when they're here, they're great. The pineapple is probably the best pineapple I've ever eaten anywhere in the world. I mean, it's phenomenal, but it's only here for a few months and then you don't have it again. Same thing with tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, kind of things that you would want for a salad. When they're here, they're usually really good and they're fresh because they're locally grown, but then they're gone for months at a time, so you don't have them to put up with. Swimming with whales. It was pretty amazing to get down into the water and see these giant creatures that were just, it's really humbling to get in there and you see these things that are just like so huge and you're in their world, and I really can't explain it. Getting in the water with those whales was just really something. You're in the water so close that you can almost touch them and you can feel the waves move as they gently swing their tail back and forth. And to be in the water with them for 45 minutes at a time and to watch a mother and its baby calf is just an amazing experience. I've always thought of jellyfish as something that would sting you. In fact, I've been stung by a jellyfish in Florida before. But when you get in the water with all these jellyfish, it was just amazing. To go diving and to see sharks. I think a lot of people freak out when they think, oh my gosh, you go diving, you're going to get bit by a shark. But when you see sharks, it's really an experience, and you see them, they're nocturnal animals, particularly the reef shark that are prevalent here. So when you go in the daytime, they're just kind of hanging out, and you can just sit there and you can watch them swimming back and forth. Hopefully I'm a better person because of my 2 years in Peace Corps. Hopefully I look at things with much more of a worldview. I think I thought of myself as a person in news who was pretty well informed and had a good view of the world. And I realized after 2 years in Peace Corps that, you know what, I really didn't have a very good worldview. It's so much different when you live outside the U.S. and you look at the U.S. and you hear what other people say about the U.S. than it is when you live in the U.S. and you read the news, and it's just very different. And I think that my perspective will have changed. Certainly Tonga is going to be a part of the rest of my life. The people that I've met here, the things that I've learned, so many of the things I admire about the Tongans I hope that I can carry with me. The commitment that they have to their family and to their friends, the way that they're very generous in giving, and they will always offer you food, and they give you the shirt off your back, and they'll give you the shirt off of someone else's back if you ask. I mean, they're just an amazing people, and I hope that maybe I can be as generous as some of the Tongans are, and I think more patient. Hopefully I'll be a lot more patient when I get back.
Steve has been very helpful in any way that he can assist us. We'll miss him very much.
And want to say thank you to his family for encouraging Steve to come to Tonga and work with us. We really miss him, and we wish him all the best.
I don't think I would trade it for anything, and I would certainly do it again.